Hello, I'm Chris from Airwindows, and we're throwing another stream on. We're going to see how this works because I can perhaps do the Tuesday-Thursday thing as long as I don't try to pull 8-hour shifts. I'm too old to pull 8-hour shifts. And there was something that I figured I could do, which maybe I can do on stream. There are a number of things that I could do. One of the things I could do is sit around playing Minecraft on stream, but I'm not doing that today. Instead, I'm thinking in terms of more console X work. That's sort of what I have in mind today. And in particular, we've sort of figured out the meter. That's what I was working on last time. In fact, I can even show you what we got. I don't think I was actually doing the coding of it so much as I was just demonstrating where I had got to. But don't mind me, I'm just derping around, getting to my sounds folder and opening a whatever. And doing a little refresher. Oh, look, wood grain. See, this is where we left off, is demonstrating that console X and indeed Airwindows meter already has this. So if you're interested, like I can fire up Airwindows globals again, and just for now, I think I'm going to go back to sort of my defaults. And that includes not having the wood background texture. But if you want everything to be wood grain, you'll be able to do it. You can also have the blinky light LED colors be custom color. They don't have to be red. If you like your pale gray or whatever, and you would like all of the blinky lights, these and future ones, to be a color other than red, you can choose to do that. But I'm going to leave it as red. And that means all I have to do is close it and reopen it. And when it starts up again, that is what it looks like. And here is what this meter does, and that's the thing that I've been developing. I'm not sure I've played Alien Kitten through it, but here it is, and sure enough, it's kind of a sea of blue with some sparks out at the end. And the sparks out at the end are brightness. So fair enough then. I guess I set that one up okay. And we've got our wonderful controls. This is kind of future-proofed because the thing is, I'm not going to be able to see that, am I? If you had a giant, enormous monitor, oh, look, I can see it on the YouTube channel. If you have a humongous monitor or incredibly high resolution, you see that your little thumb is kind of micro-detailed. And one of the things that it does is you've got this detent area and a bit of a highlight, and then there's this tiny little bezel, like a milled slot between the actual knob and where the thumb is. And of course these will come in different colors as well, and I've got this itty bitty resonance knob. Everything will scale, and I feel I can stop that now. But, you know, one of the things that I need to do is, what's good? Well, it's good seeing you again. And one of the things I need to do is start setting this up to work with console X. And the whole arrangement they're going to have the same layout of controls, which does not mean that it's always the same layout, because like if you have it be long and skinny like this, it needs to be laid out in one way, and if you have it vertical like this, it needs to be laid out in a different way. And there's a variety of things between. You can see that these are kind of boinging around, and that is because I've got it filling available spaces as much as possible and making the labels be as readable as possible. But I wonder if I can I show the bounding boxes? Yes, I can. Okay, so check this out. The way these things move and work is that there's these bounding boxes, but they're not a fixed number. They're being set up in relation to how big the window is and what shape it is. So we've got the meter up top. I'm considering hacking this so that everything else I do is defined as the remaining area with the meter removed, because that is strictly at the top edge. And you can see that the boundaries of that are slightly in from the edge, although this is actually not. And then we've got this set to be that size of a bounding box, and that is why when you move it around, it fills up as much of a space as it can, but it'll make itself fit within that space, and that will make the knobs distribute themselves usefully as the size and shape of everything changes. And then we've got this one here, same thing. You can see that vertically moving it isn't changing its size because it's actually being constrained by how wide it is. But then you can squish it even further to make it much smaller, and this is the way and this is a full width one, but it's very skinny. It's wide but not skinny. It is horizontal rather than vertical. Let's just say that. So what I need to do, and it's a pity I don't have a better camera angle for this, but remember how I made these little cards? These are little pieces of the 47. I'm working on something else right now. However, it is not impossible that this stuff will end up becoming a clip type plugin, in which case having something like that would start, like doing this makes it possible for me to throw many more controls into an interface than I've been able to do normally, especially when I'm designing stuff around Airwindows Consolidated, because Airwindows Consolidated is restricted to 10 controls. I'm not sure. I don't know what the best way to precondition speech for a vocoder is. You would have to explain to me what the breathing noise is doing. Like, is it supposed to sound differently than it does? Could it be that when you breathe, you're causing like low frequency rumble? Do you need a pop filter? But yeah, what we've got here, and we can also turn these things off and on if we want, is this is the thing that Sudara, who has made Pampo Juice that I'm using for the graphics of this, Sudara made this and has this stuff going on. We've got a little corner bitty here. This is apparently an FPS meter, it says. But yeah, it shows you what everything in the interface is doing. However, I won't be able to lay out the positions of things with this. For instance, if I was to do this and then use these little sliders that you see here, it'll show me like this. If I was to use these to lay out the interface, like I would be able to do if I was using this inspector to set up everything. Then you switch it off, and then I can manipulate this now giant knob. If I close it, it's just going to pop back, or it's going to pop back the instant I reshape, because what I've got is repositioning the knobs based on the size and shape of the window, up to and including this top bar and sort of the dimensions of it. I could probably get away with having it be a consistent size, but it's actually, I think it's good because when we get real small, the bar should also shrink. The bar is a factor of the bevels in the interface. And the bevels are a number called line width. And line width is how a bunch of this stuff is drawn. It's like a square root of a square root or something. And that means that when we have a really small thing, it's making some of these be tiny, but not literally scaling it down in exact proportion. For instance, if we make this big, these words are not nearly as large. But if I shrink it down to ridiculously tiny, oh hey, all of a sudden, fire threshold is much larger than it was, and you can still manipulate everything. You could probably even manipulate this flyspec one. And this one that's called fader is also much smaller, but the text isn't as small relatively. Like, watch what happens to this one with the red pointer, fire threshold, as I make it larger. Now the letters are narrower than the knob, but if I make it be tiny, the letters start taking up more and more space, unless, of course, I make this bounding box narrow, in which case it'll start squishing that again. And the whole idea is to be able to take Console X and choose your window size and shape. I'm going to be wanting to come up with a default, a start one. 47, that's a very good question that I probably won't be able to answer. And I'll tell you why. This stuff works inside here. Let me close it. This stuff works inside the Pamplejuice framework, which is a juice-based, is J-U-C-E, a juice-based setup for using graphical user interfaces in this way. But I'm working with what that gives me. I can do a lot of weird, neat stuff with what that gives me. For instance, here is my draw that meter code. And it's actually a lot more efficient than the full-on Airwindows meter code in every way, up to and including the fact that the bitmap being used for drawing those colored lights, that's actually a tiny, tiny bitmap that is being stretched on the fly to be drawn into even a very large window. So it doesn't actually, I don't know whether it has to make an off-screen bitmap the size of what's on the window. But the internal thing that is doing the calculation and having stuff drawn on it is not as large. Would you be interested in seeing what that means? Let me take a minute and show you what that means. If I change this one line of code that says set image resampling quality, in which I set back once I'm done, from high resampling quality to low resampling quality, watch what happens. Did I hit build? I think I did. It's okay if I'm a little fuzzy as to whether I've hit build or not. Watch this. I am going to show you what this actually does and how it works. We're using a thing, we changed it from, I think it was bicubic resampling to nearest neighbor resampling. What's this? Nearest neighbor resampling means now it's drawing as squares, which is pretty enough, I suppose. Could consider using this or somehow put it in as a control that you could use. In fact, maybe that would be more fun than coming up with all those knobs. So here's what I'm thinking. Given that, because see this, in this DAW, which is Twisted Wave, so it's an app, not a DAW, it's letting me resize the window, but I'm not using this resize control down here to do it. The little crosshatches there are what says, hey, this is resizable, but I'm not actually using that. Or rather, I'm using it here, but if I do it here, I'm not. And if I see where my cursor is now, it's silhouetted against this part, I'm clicking on the window in which the plugin is contained. I'm not clicking on the plugin. And when I do this, I am pretty sure that Juice doesn't get the resize messages, it's just doing the repaint. So I can make it work with DAWs that have unusual positionings of where you can resize them. But if I try to make it stick to a particular aspect ratio, or if I put in limit, like I can put a limitation in here, where if you use this part of the knob in some programs, clearly not this one, there's a thing that I can set where it goes, click on this particular point, resize it, and it refuses to go smaller than like this much. But then all you have to do is click in the window outside it, and then you can squish it to any size again. So what I'm saying, 47, is I don't think it's going to be possible because I can work with the DAW giving the plugin uncontrolled resize messages, and I can make all of that flow and work as far as the positionings of the knobs and stuff, but I don't think I'm able to make it so that it saves you if you get stuck with a window that's too large and you don't have an ability to move it around. This is one of those cases. And in particular, I found that when you like dynamically resized it in this kind of way, and it had the aspect ratio and limitation stuff put in it, you could still resize it no holds barred using the outside edge of the window, but then it screwed up the rendering and you couldn't make it go back. So that's a concern. We're going to have to roll with like how this actually works rather than what would be good if we could do it. Also, hey, Gregory. SP303 vinyl sim effect, I have no way of working with that whatsoever. However, the JDola plugin that you talked about, it's on the concept list. It is basically taking an existing plugin. Here, I might actually have this handy. Let's see. And it's not going to be there. Let's see, what was the name of it? You must forgive me if I'm a little fried. That's something that I think I hope to also be a safe haven for other people who might be a little fried. That's one of the reasons I'm doing a little streaming again. And I'm trying to think of the name of my own compressor. So let's see, because there are so many of them, honestly. There are that many of them. I know it's not this far down. I don't think it has the name comp anywhere in it. We're going to scroll around until I figure out what my compressors are. That's how that's going to go. I know I have this Stonefire comp. However, it's using a compression algorithm from something else that I'm now trying to find in the infinite list of my stuff. If I was opening Airwindows Consolidated, I'd be able to look it up by compressor, but this isn't out yet. I mean to show you something that you don't have yet that is coming out, and this is the one where, assuming it works successfully, this is where you would start getting the behavior you want. So let's see, what might that be? Well, you know, one thing I could do, I know that is something that is upcoming, so let's look at the upcoming. Ah, pop, of course. Pop is what that's called. I am pretty sure I have this in here for testing, so let's find out. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. If I don't, nope, here it is. So this is essentially the same thing that lives in Console X, but it's coming out before Console X does. Although, granted, if I get back to working on Console X today before taco time at 5, then I'll be able to move on that. Also, my threshold controls don't seem to be positioned correctly. Threshold of the gate moves up when you want to kick the gate in. Threshold of the compressor goes to 1. And it works kind of like this. And we've got a ratio control, so it can go from dry to full on. It's just a attenuator compressor. If you want it to be completely bypassed and you have overs, you have to turn ratio to 0. Because otherwise it will step on your audio. And you can have it be more squish with the release or slow the release way down. And manipulation of the attack, although it's not going to sound quite like anybody else's, this is a strictly Airwindows one, means you can have it be fairly quick and scrunched. Oh, and we are back to starting over, I guess. So this becomes like your vibe style compressor. And then if you slow down the attack, you start getting the percussive hits poking out in the way that they do. House arrest, it entails you waiting until this weekend. And if you have a really, really slow attack, then you're letting through like everything. And if you slow the release down, notice that it seems to have gotten quieter, and that's because it's not springing back to full volume as quickly. So this can hopefully be a nice little vibe compressor, and this is the one that lives in Console X, but this is coming out sooner. And again, maybe I could take the gate out for the one you're talking about, Gregory. Because here's what the gate does. And then the sustain and release are like this. Oh, it went to the end of it and stopped. Play it again, Sam. So the threshold is triggering not off of the actual compressed signal, it's triggering off the input signal before you compress it. And the release is what gives you a, and not a problem house arrest. I'm just saying that the part that you're probably looking for, the sinew with the wet dry in it, is I think coming out this weekend. Now notice what the gate's doing. We can have it cut off at the same speed, but then sustain a little more. And this is a way to tighten up sparky gates like this, rather than have it just be sort of chuggy like this. See, it's all crackly, but then if you turn up the sustain, and that lets you get the gated sound that you want with the speed that you want, but the amount of sustain that you want. And of course, the behavior of the compression is completely independent of that. Manipulating the compressor is not going to alter the behavior of the gate. So that's Pop 3. So that is the gate included version of what you, Gregory, are likely to see when I get around to doing that it's going to be called Donut. I'm going to make a plugin that's called Donut. It's going to have this compressor in it, but you're also going to get the ability to use the compression behavior to also sweep filters. And I'll see what I can make that do. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be an SP303 vinyl sim FX. I don't have an SP303. I can't do that. But I can do something that acts the way you're talking about. Now, where were we? Oh, yeah. No, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Not only that, it'll be a matter of, does it low pass while it's compressing, or does it low pass before it's compressing and take the low pass away when it starts compressing? There's a bunch of things that can be done that way. Perhaps also stuff like, are you low passing or filtering before it hits the compressor and manipulating it in that way, or are you doing it after it hits the compressor, or both, or all of the above? Yeah, I don't think I'll be calling it a vinyl sim, and I'm not that interested in copying the thing that you're telling me about, because I feel like it's probably going to be possible. Here, let me show you another one. This might almost be a combination of the things. Let me open that track again, because it does have enough dynamics. And let's open up a completely different plugin, which I'm going to have to look up. Gatalope, which you already have, by the way. Looks like we only have the one. When it says treb sus and bass sus, that's how the attack speed is working. So this already exists. You already got this. And what Gatalope is for is putting, it's for a particular guy. I think his name was Ola Sonmark some years ago. And he wanted a gate that he could put on his tom-toms. Where it would open for the toms, but then as it closed, it would swoop down into the bass so that it would keep the toms. So this is not exactly the same as what you're talking about. It's different forms of equalization, if I'm not mistaken. But it's doing sort of the basic concept. And the thing is, it also has the ability, rather than simply doing the low pass, and I'm not even sure that this is exactly the same. I think that it would work the other way. You can do a high pass. So now it's rolling off the lows as the gate kicks in. Or we can do both. If they match, it's just a gate again. And then this attack speed is something else entirely. I'm not even quite sure what this one is. So there you have it. What we're talking about is the Donuts one, which is more Dilla inspired and needs to have that like filtery squishy thing. Now where were we at? It's 4:08, so I got about 15. Come to think of it, give me a moment. Maybe I'll put on some music. Perhaps not. Hang on, what are we even doing? Aha. Stream audio. So just for fun, I'm going to go and look at this. This is not me going away for half an hour, but I need to warm up my stove and defrost taco makins. So I do need to do that. But what I can also do is open up gain, set it to play. I'll come back and I'll see what my Welcome to Free Luna album does on this new meter, which I've never actually looked at, so that'll be interesting. Back in a moment. Okay, I'm back. So what have we got here? Well, one thing we've got is I have not turned the interpolation back on. And that's actually making it harder to read what I'm seeing, I think. I was coming back and expecting to see a certain thing showing up on the displays, and instead I'm seeing something quite else. So, how about I quit out of here, put this back to what it was, rebuild it. Oh, this is my album. Go to the Airwindows Bandcamp. This is Welcome to Free Luna. You can have it. Nobody's bought it for like a year, but it's still gettable. I do occasionally, well, I mean, you can listen to it all you want on Bandcamp. I've also got a couple of the tracks on YouTube, like buried in my old videos. Let's see, back to this. Now let's go to Neuron Factory. This is on YouTube. And now we have the original design of this meter. I really think I prefer it being rendered as the clouds. So what I'm doing is trying to interpret what I'm seeing and figure out whether it's a useful kind of thing to be seeing. Yep. Bright sounds are making the bright sparkles. Those also come across as green. That's the flipped interpretation of what meter is doing with them. So yeah, what that is saying is I've mostly got it dialed in pretty good. Some of this stuff sort of in the middle here is on the darker side. I could pull back some of the mids and low mids and get away with it quite well. And also my extreme highs are poking through a lot, but they tend not, like they're not showing up out here. If I had green showing up out here, it would mean that my brightness was way off and far too much. Although I've got a bunch of other stuff in here, so let's do a spot check to some of these other tracks. Okay, this is a more annoying sounding track. And we've got a lot of bright green there. If I was mixing this now, I wouldn't do that. It would give me better feedback as to what I was doing. Here's another one. Oh, here's a kind of Steely Danish one. And you can see that in these red spots. Red spots on this meter indicate bass and darkness. Yeah, this one's a vibe. Definitely a groove. And this one's a lot more aggressive. It's using some of those breakbeaty-like things. That's not me playing drums. That is my modular synthesizer triggering samples of drums. I have hopes of getting back into doing this kind of thing, like making more music again. One thing I've tried to do is there's a couple of things that are being sold as kits by Thunk in the UK. So I am doing my best to lay in a supply of those kits while I can still order them and get them shipped from the UK without them being like 50% more expensive. After that point, I don't think it'll be that convenient to go and order things from the UK anymore. So that would be unfortunate. Here's a quieter track. We can see that we have a lot of bright stuff in here. All these green spots, The green spots mean I have high frequency stuff predominating. Looks to be sort of a churn of sounds. Part of that is because the peaks are a lot hotter than the reverb that it's sitting in. The more reverb, the more blur you're going to get. Here's another one. I can feel this really heavy thump coming along, and I'll probably also see that in purple or red colors out near the outside edge. Yeah, little glimpses of it here and there. Not that much. I didn't screw it up that bad, but it's still got more weight than it needs. A lot of these have a bunch of guitar playing in them. Oh, loud guitars. This was not a success of a song, but that's having a bunch of loud guitars, and when it kicks in, it's on the bright side. All of this stuff was mixed on an analog, like 16-track console, on the fly while it was being tracked. It's not actually easy to mix stuff while tracking it. It's really hard to keep track of what everything is. I could have used this stuff back when I was doing this. Would have been able to do much better. Getting into the deep cuts, we start getting weirder stuff happening. This is one of those ones where it's a lot of different noises. A lot of these noises I'll still have available. They came out of the, it's not like I can run out and get new gear all the time, so this is basically the synthesizers that you see in plugin videos, blinking away in the background, is how this is done. Another guitar-oriented one. A sort of final weird crazy one. It's chugging along pretty good, actually. You can see that the backbeat of this one is making little spikes in this general area. This is one of those going really hard, not fully in control of the synth. So I can start doing this stuff again. I've just been working so hard on these other tools. Like, if I kept doing this, I wouldn't have had time to do like this knob and these meters and stuff. So everything finds its time. As long as I'm still alive and hanging in there and I've got a roof over my head, I have the time to continue to develop these things. That won't always be true, but for now it's still true. And here is a finale to the album that is much vibier and more chill. And you can see how it's more dark and moody because these flashing lights are now hanging around being largely red and purple. Those synthesizer sounds that are coming in are probably going to come in a different color, but they're still not so bright that they're going to make white or green spots. This one I mostly got like brighter white things, although I do have and the interesting thing about this is I didn't have Console X or anything like it at the time. So this is all done with the instruments themselves tone controls. No further tone control in any of this. It's a basically line level analog mix. I've still got the mixer I did this on. I actually wouldn't mind passing it on to somebody else, but it's not a very reliable mixer, so that's a bit of a problem. And yep, what I see here is that it is showing me that I was making an effort to get the sounds good. It's kind of sitting in roughly the right zone, tending towards the dark, and then when I start throwing bright percussion around, I often go a little bit too far, but in this case it's being pretty chill, and that is a Rhodes, Fender Rhodes. It's one of the instruments that I feel is least likely to be ripped off, because like, if you busted into my place to steal all of my stuff, carrying the Rhodes is nobody's favorite thing. We'll probably always have that sucker, because it's like, who has the back to be able to carry that thing, I tell you. And again, that is called Trickle Charge, and Trickle Charge is the final track on my album Welcome Free Luna, which you can find on Bandcamp. Like, search for Welcome to Free Luna, and this is available to get if you want to support my actual music making, which I've never demanded that people do. But if you liked this so much that you wanted to own it, you can have it in 2496 super high quality. Because of course that's what I gave people. And indeed, this is a 2496 track. You're just not hearing it properly because you're hearing it over my monitor speakers. My monitor speakers have subs included with them, and that's why you can hear the bass, but the microphone is pointing away from the speakers. So yeah, let us... So I'm thinking of two things in the final half hour before taco time. And the two things I'm thinking of are, one, do I want to make my customization? And I'm going to show you that again. Basically, you put this file in a particular place on your computer, and all of my GUI-based plugins read it and do special things around it. And I can include any number of options that I want. And I could also include a blinking lights are clouds and blurred, or blinking lights have hard edges, like you also saw a little bit earlier. Because I gotta say, I don't think that was as easy to parse. I think it was more distracting, and I wouldn't want that to be a default. But this is the mechanism by which I'd be able to give you power over being able to opt for having the sort of crystallized look, which is coming from nearest neighbor interpolation, might actually work in a tiny size. Actually, let's take a minute and find out. Here's the part that changes. I could try to keep an eye out for the possibility of doing that in other meters as well. Like when I draw stuff, I could have a global capability for having all of your meters be nice and fluid and smooth, which would be the default, or hard-edged and kind of glittery. Let's see how cool that would be. Do a build. Now that I've done that build, open the same thing. I'll let it load. This is weirdly slow for a modern fast computer like mine, but whatever, it's fine. And now when we run it, scale it up like that. See how now it's little rectangles? I can make it so that you could choose between the cloud, which I would prefer, and this as a different option. You call it Mondrian mode. And then if you make the screen incredibly tiny, maybe it will actually look better that way. Yeah, I prefer cloud too. I just wonder whether this could be so cool that there are contexts where it would be good. I think cloud is better in smaller sizes too. But yeah, this is the idea is, should I make this a selectable option? I think it's very likely that if I choose to do that, I can have it done by the end of the day. Maybe that'd be fun. I'll be putting off adding all of the knobs, of course. That's a bit of a shame, but... Or maybe we can do both. You know how I always have to watch out for my streaming, because I will tend to get excited and do all the things. And I mustn't be doing that too much, but we might have a little fun. It's not like I've been going since 8 o'clock in the morning or anything. Might be able to have a little bit of fun with that today, seeing how many of these things can be done. So yeah, so here is our Edgy Boy meter. Only good use for an Edgy Boy. And here's the code. Excuse me. Honestly, it's heading in towards winter, and I don't think I'm going to be as much of a prey to coughing as I had been in a bunch of previous winters. And I'll tell you why. It's because the doctor I'm able to see at a local place called Sojourns told me that, like, when you have had COVID and which I think I did as early as, was like practically January 2020 or something. But when that's your deal, one thing that helps people is first wave antihistamines, namely, like your Benadryl and what have you. So she recommended some stuff and I tried it and immediately got better, although I am not as full of antihistamines as when I was freshly getting over COVID, which was like earlier this fall. I have to be careful about that because increasingly it is going to be not possible to get health care or recover from things like that, and that's going to be a bear. But I'll go around like, well, I mean, there's also bear with me, I'm having thoughts. Like, the thought in my mind at the moment is, I live in Vermont, however, I spend time in New Hampshire. So the question is, can you safely wear masks in New Hampshire? I bet you'll be able to wear them safely in Vermont if there's creepy stuff going around and it's the winter and whatever. I will consider those things. Also, if you have the opportunity of going and getting vaccinated for things, this is probably a good time to do that while you can. I'm honestly considering trying to get a shingles, even though I never considered that before, but it's supposed to be horrible to get. As you get older, you get a dose of shingles, and it's basically just nonstop torture until it goes away. Bad stuff. So I maybe don't want to mess with that, and my window of opportunity for being able to do things like vaccines is probably closing. So we shall see. In any case, the thing that I was thinking about was this, but not apparently this, nor that. I've got some code in here. I'm just trying to find it. Does it live here? Don't mind me, I'm trying to find where my code lives. Maybe it's here. Yeah, I bet it's here. So in Airwindows UI, we start out with all of this stuff. and we load that file, namely this file. We go and load this file, Airwindows Global's text, if it exists. If it exists, we start trying to go through options. And what I've got here is like user font, user color, user image, track color amount. If these things aren't present, it will go with the default. But if they are present, you get to specify what behavior you want. So what that logically means is if I tell it to be, if I come up with a useful name for what it means to go between like cloud view and boxes view, that too can become a amusing little technique for anything where I'm using this concept of expanding a really tiny bitmap to make a nice flickering color display with smooth interpolations. There's 3 different kinds of interpolations that you can use, and it's nearest neighbor, I think linear or bilinear, and then bicubic. And the one I'm going for is bicubic. That's giving you the cloud look. So firstly, let's throw the new option in. Most of it is not going to use interpolation, but I think that interpolation is the correct name for this. We have words, so we can copy the LED color, which will come in as a juice string. And we'll basically copy that and then use it. Pretty sure that's it. One way I can find out. Boop back to here. And let's start typing that again. If I start typing this again, it's going to show me some things about it in the autocompletes. See? Yep. I am in fact, I can't worry about viewers and streamers. There's not enough. But what I'm looking to do is be able to be there to serve my people. Like if it means anything for anybody to be here hanging out with me while I develop this stuff, and you want to share that experience because it gives you something to do, is soothing or relaxing or whatever, it makes me happy being able to play that role. So I will do that. And as you know, I will also be like, hey, I'm thinking about going and getting a shingles vaccine because there could come a time when I don't get to do that anymore. And if anybody finds that useful information, know that that is in my consideration, as well as like your flu, COVID, and so on. So see where it says resampling quality? And resampling quality, new quality. I am not sure. See, it says medium rendering quality. Maybe it's actually going to tell me what the options are. Let's find out. Firstly, yeah, I think it will. So now it's describing what it does, and it says this one just uses a nearest neighbor algorithm. That's the squares you saw. So medium resampling quality just uses bilinear interpolation, and it'll do an averaging for downsampling. And then high resampling uses bicubic for upsampling, which is what we're doing, and that's what gives you the cloud look, is using bicubic. And I set it back to the default of medium once I'm done. So let's see how easy it is to get this option working. And Om Namah Shivaya, understand that not all of my people will understand, but they will have to be patient and they will have to respect the fact that I'm not a big roaring, screaming meanie about the things that I care and believe about. If they get up in my face and are a meanie to me, I'll probably just tease them or laugh at them. I've seen some of that. I've seen people come in and get up in my face about my value system and beliefs. And I more or less should be like, sucks to be you, I guess. But we're thinking about this right now. So one thing I have already done is I have just put user interpolation, and you can use a value of none or linear or bicubic. I could probably also include nearest neighbor, because I can put in different words that cue this. I'm going to end up with a word, so let's get that word going. If I save this, I should open it back again because I'm not going to remember from 1 second to the next as to what I'm actually doing. So I need to have this showing so that I know that I'm going to make a field called user interpolation. I'll just scooch it up here so I can still see it. And then it's going to act kind of like this. We're defining multiple things here. Having the capital in the middle there is what's called camel case. I'm defining a string, which is going to start out as blank. I'm going to do this over again. It is now going to allow me to do that. See how I'm basically just following the pattern? And see what I can get out of making it follow the pattern. Oh, but I have to do this. See, that was going to be another doubled up thing. So now I'm trying to parse what this actually does and whether I need anything else anywhere. We got our custom settings. We've defined a couple of strings. String named interpolation juice plugin name. Oh. Okay, so what's going on here is this globals thing has the capacity to do this. You probably should be able to put in a bunch of interpolations and have it be like... So imagine we do have the plugin named Donuts, and the plugin named Donuts, you want to have a different value of interpolation than the other ones. So you would do... And then the plugin named Donuts gets tacked onto the front of that. So I am a little ambiguous as to why it's defaulting to user. It's not like this is looking for this saying gain interpolation or gain color. The idea here is you should be able to make a globals file that like color codes all your stuff uniquely if that pleases you. I want to make it possible to override individual plugins by the name of the plugin and have all your distortion plugs be red or all your compressors be blue or whatever if you so choose. I believe I got that stuff working. I just don't know why it says user here as if that was a default. probably, if it does find a plugin name, it strips that off in order to parse it, because it is successfully using this. This is actually working at the moment. So I guess we'll go from there. See how it says string named interpolation, juice plugin name, and then add interpolation. So we're making a string, but it's not anything that we're actually using. But this is loading a file, and so we're going to be parsing something. This is the code that does that. Ooh. Okay. This is how that works. So what it's doing, see how it's doing two things? Let me space this out a little bit. I'll explain to you what it's doing and then you'll understand. See how it's doing this in two separate ways? It's doing a it's doing two separate things. One of them is new interpolation, new color, new image. That is always the same one. So if you got something that says user font or user color, that's going to be your default always. You change everything using that. But then if you want to override it even more, we've got a special case. And in that case, what you do is more like this. So if I do that, everything is going to be light gray unless I'm running Gatalope and I have a version of Gatalope with this code in it, in which case it'll first make it be light gray and then it'll see, oh, we have a special version of that and this one needs to be red. And then it goes and makes only Gatalope plugins be red. That's how this works. Which also means we can have custom interpolation on a plugin by plugin basis or a category basis. But yeah, we're on the right track. This is working out. This may be the only thing I do today because it's already like 4:45. But I am pleased to be able to parse my way through this stuff and get this going, because that does feel to me like a good start. Now we do this. Copy, paste, and this is the one that we can see. Yep, and I have to change this part too, otherwise weird things will happen. So what that tells us is if the option thingy is user interpolation and the new option is a blank string, then instead it is what is loaded up in there. I'm not sure if we're loading them up first or if this is the only way that we go about doing this. But then, to continue, we change this part, if present. Because you have to have an attribute value that says named interpolation, and named interpolation literally means same thing except for put the name of one of the plugins in there, and then it'll do only that kind of plugin. And then I got to do this bit again. So you override it again with the output of that if you have a special version of that. I think it's probably best to have the custom ones underneath the just user version of that. I think it's going to go through them in order. Although the way I've got it set, come to think of it, the way I've got it set up, if they're not in order, it will favor the custom one over the default one. Like it will not set it up to be the default value if you have a custom value in there. So there's that. So this has now tried to load the new thing. And here's where we assign stuff. But we've also got a little extra stuff in here. These are strings. That's not what we actually want. Ah, here's where we define it. So we're going to define another thing here. And I'm not sure it's a great idea to go by strings for this, but maybe I should. Or maybe I should go by just an int. But here's where we define the variables for that. So we define an LED color and defaults to red, and then we've got this other stuff. And this is basically how we're setting these things up. So tell you what, I'm contemplating having it be an enum. Now, how do I go about doing those? Give me a second. I know I've done them in some of my code. So let's go and look at my code. Mac AU. In particular, a bunch of the recent stuff has that. I suppose I could look at any reverb that exists. So let's go and let's look at kplate. You don't have that yet. That's another one that we're waiting to develop. In C, you do it like this. Enum, blah, blah, blah. So if I copy that and paste that in here, declaration does not declare anything. A, now we are. This is now an enum. But what I actually want is and let's also squish it together because I don't think it's that useful having it take up all the space in the world for something that is just a very minor thing. That's an enum. Now if I refer to those words, what I'll get is a number. It's like I'm defining variables. Except for I think they are fixed variables. making them longer and wordier. And then I need to make another variable for what we're actually going to use. So we're going to call that an int. I am a little curious as to put all that stuff away. So that is a choice for what you should do. And we've got enums. I think if I do it that way, it's not going to conflict with other uses of bilinear or bicubic somewhere in the code. I'm making it a little wordier for the specific purpose of trying not to get in the way. And then up here is where we actually assign stuff. So now render interpolation is the number associated with bicubic. And I can also use that in logic to go if it is equal to that. Although I got to be careful because in logic in C has to be this. You can't just do a single equals or you're just assigning. That's a YouTube, that is a gotcha. So we've got if statements to do here. And we have new interpolation. This is the format in which we're going to be working with this stuff. I wonder if I can force capitalization. Let's not worry about that right now. Maybe everything's going to be lowercase. Maybe it won't care. I'm not sure. Ooh. And we have string manipulation stuff, don't we? This is a string. I should be able to use some of Juice's concepts in it. See? So we've got this. And we can fill in another string like this. Like this. So let's see what we're going to do. And that is a logic statement that exists and works. And now we're checking for whether it says nearest neighbor and assigning it appropriately. And here's where we can also do some other fussy things. For instance, check whether somebody wrote it with a space. It will be made lowercase. That's what equals and ignore case does, so capitalization shouldn't hurt or break anything. And then on the end of that, bilinear is the other option. And so render interpolation starts out as bicubic. So since it does that, we don't actually have to check for that. Blank will also be the default. We can just run it like this and it'll be fine. Much like LED color defaults to red, so you don't actually have to have that there. I just have it there because it represents what we're doing. Two options for nearest neighbor. Ooh, I should also add none. Somebody might be trying to do this and not remember that it's called nearest neighbor, but know that they don't want any interpolation. By the same token, off. So this is basically a way of just trying to make it so that if it turns out this is what we want to do, and this looks like it's going to be the final thing for the stream, I'm not adding knobs, but maybe next week I'll drop by and we'll do some of that. Or I will drop by and I'll have started doing that and then I'll continue it. But for what we have here, here's our starting stuff up. Here's Airwindows look and feel. I don't know if I actually need to do that anywhere else. Maybe it's covered. Yeah, some of this stuff works with what I did there, but I don't think I need to do further parsing of that test file because I think the test file is covered in what I've got there. So just kind of scoping it out, trying to see whether I'm correct about that. Yep. And then up here, do we have anything? Probably not. I'm going to be working with this stuff when I start adding lots of extra knobs. I'll have like 36 of these, and they're all going to be named appropriately for what they're going to be in console X. And this, likewise, here's more having all the knobs be there. I can make all the knobs before I make them do anything. There's our parsing. And let's jump right back to what I was doing there so that I can remind myself of what it was. Render interpolation. And we set it back to medium by default, so we're going to do that. Ooh, undeclared identifier? What's that about? Why are you not doing that? This is part of the default code now. It applies to everything, so it needs to also live in here. How do we do that? As we're running into a problem. So let's see what we can do with this problem. Up here, we get to refer to that stuff. See where it says Airwindows look and feel, draw linear slider, but meter doesn't seem to be one of these. Hello, Grunts. So how did I go about doing it? Because we're not doing stuff based on Airwindows look and feel, we're doing stuff based on Airwindows meter. I wonder whether I could include it in Airwindows UI. Could that be a thing? See, we got the draw linear slider. But Airwindows meter is a struct, so I can't just stick draw paint in there. Extern might mean these things can refer to each other. See, here's where I'm slipping up. Here's where something is going wrong. And I bet it can't access oh, it's not going any farther there. No member in Juice Graphics, so it's going to be somewhere else. We seem to be in Airwindows UI. Could it be that I can just directly access it from here? Does not refer to a value, eh? I'm trying to get it so the autocomplete will do what I want. What's happening is I'm trying to refer to a member of one class from inside another one. This is probably where madness lies. We'll see. Because we can certainly define some of these things, and some of this stuff actually gets used. Yeah, like juice resizable window, etc., and so on and so forth. Some of this stuff gets brought in. My question is, how can I get those values out of there? So it could be like me just sending information from the audio thread to the graphics thread that I just have to manually place things around. One thing about it is, well, no, hang on, I do need to have a render interpolation. Or be able to read these from elsewhere. So let's see. So we're in Airwindows UI, and this is a class. I don't know that much about C. I didn't go to school for computers, so there's a potential issue right there. And it's based on Juice Look and Feel v4. Plugin editor refers to some of this stuff. Plugin processor. When you're in Airwindows look and feel, or defining it as such, we get to refer to things out of the underlying class that it extends. So here's the thing. This is in Paint. We can refer to this in Paint. The question is, at what point is that actually helpful? And here's a place where we have to be able to refer to both of them. Like we're referring to Airwindows look and feel, and that probably also means we get to refer to that internal class. Let's find out. But we also are referring to meter. So let's set up an internal class in meter. There. Now, that says meter interpolation, whereas we have one in here, which is Airwindows look and feel interpolation. If you were in Blue Sky and a newcomer shows up, you have to post alfhog, apparently. I have seen this. It's not impressive. And now we've got to replace these. And then this will be alive again. Ooh, although I may say not a lot of benefit to having the enum there. Let's just ignore the enum then. 0. So all those are 0. Oop, what's going on here? Oh, this is what's going on here. Both of those are wrong. Now we don't need the enum because we're not using language to define these things. We just have to remember that it's going to be 0 for off, 2 for bicubic, and 1 for bilinear, which it's returning itself to. That's the default one. Bilinear is the default version. So now that we've got that, we go and have a look in the C file for this and the paint. And here's where we assign the one thing to the other thing. Bounce back to see how we did it. So class alpha interpolation becomes meter interpolation. And we can start it as 2. How's that going to go? Yeah, that seems to work. Another fallback, another default. Making bilinear 1 and the default. Let's throw a comment on there as well. So we start right out as defaulting to the cloud that we got to see. Mondrian meter, meaning it's rectangles. And making the meters go to bilinear means they're going to become a little blurrier. since I'm doing this, I think bicubic is going to be a better default in general. But that said, it'll still be possible. And let's see. So where do we update this stuff? Add and make visible. Oh, and here is a place where we're transferring from the graphic stuff into meter itself. This is a place where we do that. So nope. What did I use that for? Meter interpolation. Okay. There it is. And I think are we inside Airwindows look and feel? Surely not. No, I don't think we are. I think we need to do this. And here is the interpolation out of the look and feel. And it has that accessible. So now, when we go back into the code we're working with and we start trying to make these if statements, let's go and find where that was. Right down at the bottom here. Here we go. Rather than saying render interpolation, we go meter interpolation. And we're just going to use simple integers now. So that sets the low resampling quality. And by the same token, we keep defaulting it to 2, but if it is not 2, if it's 2, we set high resampling quality. I'm pretty sure it's going to always be medium resampling quality, but we could simply make that explicit. We're setting it back after we're done, but that doesn't mean we couldn't have set it somewhere else. So let's just be thorough. One. I don't know how long it takes for the code to set these things, but it's a bunch of if statements anywho, so that'll be fine. And you know what? This should probably work. We'll find out. It's building. It succeeded in building. Here's our globals. We'll save that. Open up. Welcome to Free Lunar, or rather something that opens quicker. How about opening up this little burst of music? So if this global works, I'll be able to open this and it will look the way that it looked before. The clouds I wanted it to have. And I would say, yeah, that looks the way I wanted it to have. However, without relaunching the program, if we set it to none and save that and then open it up again, got there. And then just for fun, bilinear is not the default. But here, save. But let's see what it looks like. It's still a cloud, but it is slightly less defined. You can see that the little lines are less sharp. So it's just a little fuzzier. And then all we do is open it up again. And there's our sharp pointed one, which I do prefer because we have those little spikes showing up in various places, and I like them showing up as these sharp little lines on a larger thing rather than just a sort of blurry, foggy area. It makes it look as if there's more definition in there. Like this here. It looks like a sharper line that catches the eye a little bit more than if it's just a blurry area or indeed a square like this big. Also, if you type stuff in that doesn't fit, it should just default to bicubic if it can't find the correct name. But we have none and off as, yeah, that's why I'm doing it. So I'll add a code into the actual GUI code here. But this part is done. And if we go back to here, well, in some contexts it'll probably be nice. And there's probably stuff that I can do where, and you never can tell, like he says as he thinks he's done and then decides he's not. We're going to go full on black. And I don't need to redo that, do I? I'm fine, it's already there. And did I tell it to be none? Hang on. What am I doing? I didn't. Or that'll work too. And then as I load up my example, and say you're going for some very, like you're some dark techno person. So you need your thing to look like this. Dun dun. And so your aesthetic is kind of all blackout mode, and for whatever reason, suppose that you need this look. Or not quite as intense. But you can see more of the interface that way. Maybe this is your jam. Maybe this is the aesthetic you need. The point being, it's more customization possibilities and more possibility for people to make, because if you set this, unless you set it on a plugin by plugin basis by defining it as only for meter or whatever, or only for the channel, you could override just the channel plugin to be this, and then or you could have the bus plugin be the cloud one, but then the channel plugin, all of your channel plugins are narrower because you're doing some kind of vertical thing. So maybe this just feels better for you. If you have everything really, really narrow, you can barely read the writing, but it looks better to you when you have defined little areas. That could be a thing. Although that said, changing it right back, it still looks good in cloud mode. And it's possible that with this kind of thing, you can see it more clearly. This is a text file. You would be putting it in a specified location. The location that you put it in is Documents, Airwindows, or whatever your Documents folder is that Juice is looking for on Windows. You either make an Airwindows folder and put Airwindows Global's text in that folder, and then you just change the code in Notepad. You'd be able to do this just in Notepad or whatever. Boop. And next time we'll do more stuff with these knobs, because we haven't done anything with the knobs today. But I did successfully put in that additional field for changing how the meter works. It makes me tempted to go into Airwindows Meter, the chart one, and reprogram it, but it doesn't take advantage of that behavior. The behavior I'm talking about is, of course, taking a tiny little file and stretching it and expanding it out. Well, let's quickly find out. Here's our current version of, here is our current version of Meter. As you can see, it's using the same font and color as the other one. Thing about it though is, and we've also bit changingness gain. And the answer is no, that's not going to help us because it doesn't actually stretch. It just repositions over an existing size, which can be larger or smaller, but defaults to what I'm considering a base size. And then if you make it narrower, it will scroll around that way. But this is the mastering oriented one. I'm not that worried if this one doesn't stretch, so it's not a problem. And then there's the rotary sliders. We do actually use interpolation for some of these things, but I am not sure it'll look as nice on the knobs. So there's that. And here's where we do this. Copy the section to other stretched bitmap meters, meaning anything that I do along those lines, if I'm using that stretch equality to make the larger display that's got a sort of smooth look to it, I can use the same technique, and then you can fiddle with the rendering of the meters on all kinds of different stuff if it pleases you. We could, however, do one final trick. You can find out whether it's going to change everything around. And let's actually do that thing as a final little thing for the stream. I've gone over time, but whatever. My tacos are going to be ready any minute now. Here's our thing. I think, let's find out. Airwindows globals. Not bicubic, but none. Let us now see whether this changes the rendering of all of the everything. And whether it looks cool if it does. I'm not sure it is changing the knob rendering. So that's blocky, but this doesn't look as blocky as all that. Oh, I think I know why too. The reason this is such a smooth looking knob is none of this is being rendered by a bitmap. It's the same thing I was doing in mastering tools years ago. It's just drawing graphics primitives. That's why I can get such a crisp look to it. Is nothing about this is bitmaps being scaled up or down or anything. None of it is going to be affected. So far so good with that. Return to the way I normally have it. And I suppose there's no special reason not to put this back. I thought it was going to do more, but... Or, if that's the only bitmap I'm drawing, I'm the one using... It's not like there's other versions of Juice that are going to be running, so let's not even bother setting it back. No, it's going to be fine. In fact, I don't necessarily even have to run it in here, but you know what? I can, just to make sure that it works. And this is the section that does it. Yeah, I thought that it was maybe going to take some of the shadings that are built into the knobs and make those be blocky. But it does not do that. It does not do that thing. Okay. With that, I am going to say goodnight and go off and make my tacos. I was thinking I was going to make more knobs in the plugin, but you know what? We added a feature. The feature only relates to anything that has actual meters built into it. But that's fine. That's not bad. And on that note, I'll talk to you most likely, we'll see, well, let's see, folks, this coming weekend when I drop Air 4. Air 4 is, I believe, what I'm planning for that. But then I'll do another live stream at some point. If not, tell you what. If I need to not push too hard, I will just do a Wednesday check-in stream. On the other hand, if I do like Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'll maybe show up a little earlier in the afternoon, kind of like I sort of a little bit did today. And we'll see how it works. And I'll talk to you folks later. Bye-bye.